Chapter 32 Serenade of Water. Chapter 32 Serenade of Water. Link squinted as light splashed across his face, streaming into the dwelling that had once been a Kokiri's home. He groaned, bringing up a hand to shield his eyes. A tall figure stood in the doorway, peering down at him with a severe gaze. He blinked, still trying to shake off the last vestiges of sleep. The figure, Link realized, was Impa. To his surprise, she was wearing her disguise again. "You were warned about breaking mirrors, Link," Impa chided, a faint smile tugging at one corner of her mouth. "Feeling better?" Link nodded. Aside from a pounding headache, he no longer felt like a horse had run over him. He wondered where Navi was, half expecting her to fly into the room after Impa started chastising him for sleeping too much. He would have been relieved if she did, knowing it was a sure sign she was okay. But a quick glance around the room told him Navi wasn't there. All he could see were his chainmail shirt and clothes besides the wooden bench he was lying on. "How is Navi?" Link asked. "Navi is well," Impa replied. She stepped inside, letting the cloth that draped across the doorway swing back into place. "Where is she?" "With Sheik, I believe," Impa replied as she moved beside the bed. She studied him, her lips pursed. "Your wounds have healed nicely." Link followed her gaze. Beyond where the chainmail had protected him, a dozen or more scars marred his arms. They were not nearly as obvious as the marks on his face, but they still made him feel shamefully weak. He tugged at his sleeves, self-consciously, in an effort to cover them. "You need not be ashamed," Impa said, as if reading his thoughts. "Many consider scars to be a mark of character." "I'm not ashamed," Link replied. Impa raised a questioning eyebrow. Her disguise might have made Impa less intimidating, but Link still felt uncomfortable under the weight of her gaze. Even though Impa's red eyes didn't glow, they still reminded him of the creature that stepped from the mirror. The mirror. He shuddered as he recalled the hatred that burned in his shadow's eyes. Link could still feel the steel of the black blades cutting into his flesh, and hear the ear-shattering explosion as seething hot mirror shards sliced and burned his skin. Navi, tumbling, falling, as the mirror shattered around them. "Ganondorf sends his regards, hero of time." "Link?" Impa's voice roused him, and he shuddered. "Are you in pain?" she asked. "No," Link replied quickly. "No, it's fine." It was an obvious lie. "Was anyone else hurt?" he asked quickly before Impa could question him further. "Just you and Navi," Impa replied, still eyeing him with concern. "The Gorons received a few scratches, but were otherwise unharmed. I sent them home a few hours ago." "Did you get the ocarina?" Link asked. Impa's grave expression answered his question. "No. There is still hope that one of my spies will find the instrument." "And how will they know to look for it?" Link asked. "I met them in Kakariko," Impa explained. "There are still a few people I can trust to find the ocarina, and until they do, or I find some way of retrieving it myself, worrying will do little good. You must focus on finding the remaining sages." Focus. Link wished Sheik and Impa would stop saying that. He knew Navi would have told him she was right. "Sheik said I should look for the Sage of Water next," Link said as he tried to recall a similar conversation he'd had with her. "That would be the best place to start," Impa replied. "The Zora will be here soon. Once the water temple is cleansed, and we find the water medallion, the next sage can be chosen." "Chosen?" Link asked, unsure that he understood. "I thought they were already chosen." "Not exactly," Impa said patiently. "Then how?" "Normally, they are asked, and then anointed by the leader of the sages in the sacred realm." But Darunia and Soraya didn't get a choice, Link pointed out. Soraya certainly hadn't. Given their willingness to sacrifice their lives for their people, perhaps Rauru believed there was little doubt Soraya or Darunia would accept. The reminder of Soraya's close brush with death threatened to bring back a flood of memories, few of them pleasant. Fortunately, he was distracted by the sound of approaching footsteps crunching upon soft earth. Link got to his feet. He wobbled as he did so, his head swimming. Feeling cold, he threw the cloak that had served as his blanket around his shoulders. Sheik walked in the door, ducking beneath the low archway. Navi flew inside after her, looking agitated. For an instant, Link wasn't sure what to say. "Navi," he breathed, almost laughing with relief. "You're okay." He stretched out his hands as she flew over and landed on one palm. The edge of a black scar that ran across the side of Navi's bosom peeked out over the edge of her dress. He surveyed the injury with a grimace. "I'm sorry you got hurt." "Don't be," Navi said, her smile not quite touching her eyes. "It was bound to happen eventually." Sheik cleared her throat. "Impa, the Zora Queen is here," she announced. She looked impassive, but Link could pick up an undertone of disapproval in Sheik's voice. "The Zora Queen? Well, that is a little unexpected." Impa's look of surprise was quickly hidden as she addressed Link. "In the Zora's company, you must call me Lady Rin. With the exception of Ruto, they do not know that Princess Zelda's nursemaid is still alive, nor would it be wise to tell them." Link understood. He reasoned that Impa didn't want any of the Zora letting slip, especially if they were ever captured. Navi, meanwhile, made a vexed sound. "What's wrong?" Link asked. "I wanted them to wait until you were well enough," she muttered, no longer smiling. Link opened his mouth, but before he could respond, the fabric covering the door was swept aside as the Zora Queen herself glided into the room unannounced. She carried herself with an air of authority, the flowing blue garments of fine silk and bejeweled crown upon her head, adding to the illusion of majesty. This illusion was quickly shattered when, with a squeal with delight and her arms outstretched, Ruto launched herself towards Link. She kissed him full on the cheek and then again on the other. Link was so shocked, he stumbled backward and grabbed Ruto to stop himself from falling. They both went crashing into the bed, Ruto landing on top of Link. "Well, aren't you gallant?" Ruto teased, flashing a smile. She kissed him again before getting to her feet. "I thought you were dead," she said. "Where have you been all this time? Did you forget that we are betrothed?" Navi made a retching sound, and Sheik looked at Ruto as though she had succumbed to some madness, trying not to consider the fact he was blushing furiously and still too shocked for words. Link let Ruto help him to his feet. "I still trust you have our engagement ring?" Ruto asked. Impa raised an eyebrow and exchanged a look with Sheik. "The Zora Sapphire." Link finally managed to force his mouth open. No, I don't have it." "What?" The look of adoration on Ruto's face melted into anger. "You lost my mother's sapphire?" "It's safe," Link said quickly. He had no desire to see if Ruto was still prone to tantrums. "It's just not on me. I gave it to the sages for safekeeping." Ruto immediately relaxed. "Oh, is that all?" she asked mildly. "Well, you could have told me." Both Shika were staring at Link and Ruto with a look that demanded immediate answers. "Ruto," she cut in firmly, "would you mind—" "It's your majesty," Ruto chided. Sheik did not take kindly to being interrupted. "I will call you by your royal title when you act like a queen." "And what would you know about being a queen?" Ruto snapped. "A lot more than you," Sheik replied. Her voice was deadly quiet and thick with contempt. A cold and uncomfortable silence filled the room as Sheik stared down the Zora Queen. Link couldn't help but think that Ruto's last comment had struck a nerve. Her eyes were like daggers, and she looked close to committing regicide. Rudo blanched, licking her lips nervously. Rudo hadn't just struck a nerve. She'd severed it. It wasn't until Impa took a step towards her that Sheik regained her stony countenance. "Forgive me for interrupting, but we have more important things to discuss," Impa said firmly. "Sheik, if you go to my horse, you will find a map of Lake Hylia in the saddlebags. Can you bring it to me?" "Of course," Sheik said, and then she disappeared out the door without another word. "You must forgive Sheik. She still has a lot to learn when it comes to her temper," Impa said. "There is no need to apologize," Rudo said, her charming smile returning. "I was too hard on the girl." Girl, Link thought. It was a good thing Sheik hadn't been close enough to hear that. "I must say, Your Majesty, that I find your presence surprising. You told me you were sending an envoy, but I did not think for a second you would come. You realize just how much danger you're putting yourself in, don't you?" Impa asked. "Of course I do," Rudo said snappishly. "Believe me, the other Zora were not happy about it. I had to go to Lake Hylia myself. Our home is drying up, and as you have no doubt noticed, the land is plagued by drought. All of the 9 kingdoms are in a drought. 10 if you include the Billins," Impa said. "I am aware of that," Rudo said irritably. Impa looked deeply unimpressed by Rudo's lack of respect. "I'm sure the source is the curse placed on Lake Hylia. It is my intention to break the curse." "As I recall, you have already attempted to retake the temple and reclaim the medallion inside several times. What makes you think you will fare any better this time?" Impa asked. "Link can help me destroy the source of the curse," Rudo said, glancing hopefully at him. Link barely suppressed a groan. "While I'm sure Link is glad you have so much faith in him, there is one small problem. Link can't breathe underwater," Navi pointed out. "I am aware of that," Rudo exclaimed peevishly, "which is why I have brought something that will help." Rudo shuffled uncomfortably before moving to the door and calling her guards. Her 2 guards disappeared and quickly returned with an elaborately carved and glided chest, decorated with scenes of Zora standing before a throne shaped like a shell. Link's curiosity piqued as the Zora set it down and then retreated back outside. Rudo looked expectantly at Link. "Well, go on. Open it." Link opened the lid to reveal a sapphire blue tunic made of tiny scales which rippled in the light. The headpiece was shaped like a fishtail with a trim of golden scales. A tiara-like ornament adorned its front with a sapphire in it. A pair of boots lay beneath the tunic, webbed like a Zora's feet. Amongst the clothing lay a white mask in the likeness of a Zora's face. "Hang on a second," Navi said, peering at the tunic as Link unraveled it and held it up. "You knew Link was not a Kokiri? How?" "I guessed," Rudo beamed. "Everyone knows a Kokiri can't leave the forest. The day you found me with your friend, you left the forest. She did not." Link ran his thumb along the cool blue scales. "Thank you," he said. As taken back as he was by the gift, and as beautiful as it was, he couldn't help but notice a small problem. "It looks lovely, but how is it supposed to stop me from drowning?" "That's what the mask is for," Rudo said, pointing at the mask. "It will let you breathe underwater." "Just how much underwater traveling does our journey involve?" Link asked cautiously. "Not a lot," Rudo answered. "You have to pass through a series of underwater caves to get inside the temple." Link frowned, looking up at Navi, who gave an unhappy murmur. "I guess that means I can't come with you." "You can stay here. Besides," his eyes trailed towards the edge of the scar above her dress. "No, I can wait on the lakeshore," said Navi quickly. "You're not leaving me behind." Link wanted to ask if she was up to traveling, given her injury, but decided not to in front of Rudo. "You never told me why Link needs the medallions on the Belt of Sages," Rudo said as Link admired the tunic. Link tilted his head towards an interest towards Impa. She regarded Rudo pensively, as though calculating how much to tell her. When completed, the Belt of Sages allows the bearer to control the elements of magic, and with the aid of the sages, defeat whatever evil threatens Hyrule. It was a symbol of unity once, much like your sapphire. Those who worship the sages placed a great importance on them. People used to worship the sages? Link asked. Remembering the bodies scattered and broken in the Temple of Time was like recalling a distant nightmare. With some effort, Link refused to let those memories take hold. Of course, Impa said, with a patience Ruto lacked. Their numbers were in decline for years, up until Ganondorf destroyed them. But they had a strong following. Rauru was a member of their order, until Ganondorf killed them. Just then, Sheik walked back in, fixing Ruto with a frigid stare. The Zora did not meet her eyes. Sheik held out the scroll clutched in her hand. Impa accepted it without a word. When do we leave? Link asked, eager to break the uncomfortable silence that filled the room. We leave this afternoon, said Ruto. My guards will accompany us into the temple. How are we going to get there? Navi asked. It's a fair way by swimming. Ruto leaped to an answer almost immediately. The Serenade of Water can open the portal to Lake Hylia. The what? Navi asked blankly. It's the song that activates the portal to Lake Hylia, Ruto answered. Where did you find that out? Impa asked. It was found amongst some of our records that survived the attack on Zora's domain, Ruto explained. It is mentioned in many a journal, but only the Zora seem to have bothered to record the song itself. Are you sure this is the right one? Navi asked. Ruto fixed Navi with an irritable glare. I'm certain of it. It better be, Navi muttered. The last thing we want is to end up being sent to the bottom of some ocean. The portal can be found inside a shrine beside the lake, Sheik said. Her map was unrolled on the bed, and she pointed to a marked object on the southern shore. What concerns me is how close the Gerudo or the Moblins are to it. If they spot anyone using the portal, you will not survive. Out of everyone, Sheik looked the most unenthusiastic about Ruto's plan. My people already control the lake. I trust you still have the instrument that can activate the portal? Ruto asked. Sheik gave a curt nod. Yes, my harp. The other instrument was stolen by Ganondorf. Link flinched at the recollection of losing the ocarina. The apprehension must have shown on his face too, as Ruto added, I have close to 100 Zora occupying the lake. We will be perfectly safe. 100 against a horde of Moblins? Impa said skeptically. That is hardly safe. We will be long gone before any hordes can threaten us, Ruto said calmly. I hope so, Link muttered. He did not like this plan at all. You will need my harp to get back. Don't lose it, Sheik said sternly. Ruto nodded, adding when Sheik's stare seemed to bore into her. Is that all? Sheik nodded stonily. She did not seem particularly thrilled, and Link decided not to mention how prone Ruto was to losing things. I'll make sure she doesn't lose it. Good. I will need to discuss this with my guards. If you will excuse me. Ruto got up and strode out the door. A pregnant pause filled the room after Ruto left, and Link became increasingly aware of just how small the hut was with everyone crowded inside. The fresh air that billowed through the door as Ruto let the curtain fall back in place beckoned to him. Announcing his intention to check on Epona, Link made a hasty exit. He hoped it didn't look like the escape that it was. Breathing a sigh of relief as the fresh air rolled over him, Link began walking towards 3 horses picketed by a nearby tree. Epona greeted him with a neigh and buzzed her lips while the other 2 barely lifted their heads from their food. One horse, he noted, was Impa's white mare, Silver. She regarded Link with a suspicious stare, and then returned to grazing. Epona was more accepting of his company, and extended her head towards him. Food? She seemed to say as she sniffed him. Hey, girl, he said, rubbing Epona's muzzle. She rolled her eyes approvingly. Did you miss me? Epona neighed in response, and let him stroke her mane. I can't believe Rudo did that, Navi said, landing on Epona's saddle. Don't remind me, Link blushed, glancing at her. Again, his eyes fell on the black scar, and his stomach twisted. Are you going to be all right traveling? You can always stay here. Navi shook her head angrily. I'm not staying behind just because I got hurt. Link sighed. Sometimes she was just as stubborn as he was. This isn't a normal injury. It could kill you if you don't remain in the forest. His throat tightened. I don't want anything more to happen to you. If it did, his voice cracked as his throat clenched so tight it hurt to speak. If Navi died, he was not sure if he could go on. Don't worry about me, Navi said, her voice thick with emotion. I will be fine, really. Epona snorted as Link stopped petting her. I'm serious, Navi. He wished she would listen. I will be okay, trust me. She gave him a sad smile. Link nodded, swallowing. We'll find a way to heal you. I promise. That was one promise he hoped he could keep. Wanting to distract himself from the thoughts of recent events, Link busied himself grooming Epona. The mare was quiet, as though sensing Link's troubled thoughts as he tried in vain to shake off his memory of the mirrors. He had fought many creatures, many of which still haunted his dreams. However, all of his encounters paled in comparison to being attacked by a demon that took his likeness. To say he was afraid would have been an understatement. Even Navi's attempts to distract him did not help. What if Ganondorf could conjure creatures that took on the appearance of other people? Those he couldn't save, or his friends, or a Kokiri? The thought made him cold. He kept stroking Epona slowly with the brush as the memories dulled his senses until he was no longer aware of his surroundings. Oi, Link! I'm talking to you! Link jumped, dropping the brush. Epona jerked, pulling the reins from his grip. It was only Mori. Link realized as he looked around. I didn't mean to startle you, she said. Ferenz is after you. He's at the Great Deku Tree's meadow. She flew off without another word, leaving Link to wonder why Ferenz had sent for him, and why he wanted to meet in front of the Great Deku Tree. Come on, Navi prodded him. Let's go and see what Ferenz is up to. Offering Epona one final pat, he followed Mori. Lost in melancholy, Link barely took in the sight of the blossoming trees, some dropping small flurries of delicate flower petals as birds, hungry for nectar, disturbed their branches. Warm golden sunlight danced through the trees, dappling the forest floor. It was a peaceful sight. As a child, he would have been playing amidst the leafy bowers, jumping between the limbs of a tree with all the agility of a monkey. He would have been lying in the grass, soaking in the sun's warmth like a lizard upon a rock, and listening to the soft notes of an ocarina or the sweet sound of birdsong. Where once excitement and contentment had been, cold emptiness and insecurity remained. Arriving at the clearing, Link was surprised to find not just Ferenz waiting for him, but Sheik as well as a gathering of Kokiri. Many of them murmured amongst themselves as Link approached. Some greeted him warmly while others eyed him warily. On both occasions, Link had returned to the forest. Something bad had happened. A stab of guilt ebbed through him. They never asked for this. Any of this. Link's eyes were drawn to the face of the Great Deku Tree, its lifeless trunk gazing sightlessly down upon the world in front of it. Ferenz hushed the Kokiri. There were only 20, a small portion of those Link rescued. All of them were sitting cross-legged on the ground, and Link spotted a few faces he knew well. We were deciding on a new leader. Now Mito's gone. Ferenz looked at Mori, and then the distant mound by the Great Deku Tree. Link guessed who the Kokiri had chosen as their new leader, staring at Ferenz before the boy affirmed it. That's not why I asked you here, though. And given that the forest has been attacked twice since we returned, the Kokiri who used to form the Elder Council and I have been discussing what to do. Ferenz cast a sweeping glance over the gathered Kokiri. We want to help. Sheik rubbed her chin, her brow furrowed in thought. It wasn't my idea, Link. What do you mean, help? Navi asked slowly. Link knew exactly what Ferenz meant. His heart pounded loudly in his chest, his insides clenching in horror. The Kokiri wanted to help fight Ganondorf. No. Link gazed around at the Kokiri, who were all staring at him, waiting for him to speak. They had only just gotten their home back, and Link had no desire to see them in harm's way again. No, Link said intently. No, you can't. Sheik, how could you do this? Sheik looked affronted at his accusation, but her voice was calm. I told you, this was not my doing. Then whose was it? Link asked. He directed the question at Ferenz. It was ours, Ferenz answered. He gestured to the other Kokiri who voiced their assent. Soraya would have agreed, Link, said Mori as she hovered by Ferenz's ear. When Soraya helped Miro and I escape the Gerudo, Fora told the Skull Kids they couldn't ignore what was happening outside the woods. We can't ignore it either. You can't, Link stammered. He didn't want them to get hurt. Not now. It's too dangerous. The decision is not yours, Link. It is theirs to make, the Deku Sprout said in his mind. Link almost jumped at the sensation of having the tree's spirit mind in his head. Once Link had been used to this, even enjoying the feeling of the meld between himself and the Forest Guardian, but that had been a long time ago. Why not? One of the other Kokiri elders piped up. The woods aren't the same as before, he trailed off, looking back towards the enormous trunk that took up most of the clearing. Before the great Deku Tree died, Link could not help but lament at the boy's statement. No, the forest wasn't the same anymore. This isn't a bunch of irritating Deku scrubs or even flesh-eating plants we're talking about, Link said after he tore his eyes away from the great Deku Tree's trunk. There are far deadlier things out there. Like that dragon? One of the girls asked. We know that. Who said anything about fighting? Ferenz said. We don't plan to do that, and besides, I was the one who taught you to play to your strengths. Link did remember that particular lesson, but it took him a moment to see what it had to do with this. Ferenz asked me here before arranging this meeting, said Sheik. I know a way the Kokiri can help without them ever having to leave the forest. How? Link asked, not following Sheik's thought. There are many wounded amongst the refugees, and those who have been fighting to free Hyrule from Ganondorf. There are still scattered remnants of Hyrule's army who Impa and I are well acquainted with. They will listen, and can help move the wounded into the forest, Sheik said. The Gerudo camp still lies abandoned, and can be used to shelter them. Won't the forest spirits harm them if they try to enter? Link asked. Sheik has already discussed this with me. The Deku Sprout spoke into Link's mind. He turned to face the plant. Sure, it was looking right at him, even though its eyes couldn't move. Although I am reluctant to offer the Hylians aid, it would be wrong not to help those who are suffering. I will tell them to make certain no harm comes to the Kokiri. The great Deku Tree would have wanted this. Link understood the Deku Sprout's reluctance. It could remember the ancient war between the Kokiri and the Hylians, memories inherited from its ancestor that occupied most of the glen. You must realize, Sheik said, once the Deku Sprout was finished, the forest is the perfect sanctuary. It would be a cruel injustice to deny them and leave them to be slaughtered by Ganondorf's army. Nor will I permit that to happen if I can help it. The arrangement will only be temporary until the wounded are either healed or Ganondorf is overthrown. Until then, we need somewhere to help them. The great Deku Tree took those caught in Hyrule's civil war into his care once, including you. Link's eyes widened in surprise. How did you know that? Rin told me, Sheik said. She eyed the Kokiri's fairies. Most of them could understand Hylian. Where exactly do the Kokiri come into this? Navi asked. We can help tend to the wounded, Foreign said. Most of us know every plant that can be used to treat most injuries or illnesses. Soraya would want this, Link. She wanted to help, remember? Link realized he was right. It was what Soraya had wanted. He wondered if she was watching them now. Without thinking, he placed a hand on the belt beneath his shirt. As long as it was still there, a part of Soraya would always be with him. I just wanted you to know we're with you, Link. You rescued us from the Gerudo. With help, Ferenz added with a glance at Sheik. You fought off the dragon that attacked us, and you avenged the Great Deku Tree. We can't just hope things will return to normal while the rest of Hyrule is dying. We want to help. You might be a little tall, but you will always be a Kokiri to us. The Kokiri broke into a chorus of agreement. As the earlier tension between them broke, they added their voices to Ferenz's words. Link was taken back as they said his name in a chant. Never had he felt this close to the ones he had grown up amongst as he did now. His eyes felt moist as he quietly thanked Ferenz. They are not as innocent as they used to be, Navi lamented softly to him. The cheering quietened to an excited murmur as several Kokiri pointed towards the edge of the clearing. Several became half the group, and soon everyone's attention was on the edge of the clearing. Link turned to see what had attracted so much attention and spotted Impa walking towards them with Ruto just beside her. Ruto gazed curiously at the forest children who stared back with expressions of astonishment and awe. They had never seen a Zora before, let alone one dressed in a royal regalia. It's time we were leaving, Link, said Impa. Link bid his friends farewell and started towards the edge of the woods. He'd only gone a few paces when Ferenz called out to him. Link looked back as Ferenz hurried over to him, holding something out that had been kept in a satchel by his side. I figured you would probably need more of these. Our tunics are a bit small, but this should be about the right size. He held out a green tunic, complete with a funnel-shaped cap, shyly adding, Well, I hope it's right. Link gasped in astonishment as he knelt down to take the clothing in his hands. How did you... With a little help from me, Impa said. Link stared at the tunic, unable to believe his eyes. Thank you, he said with a smile. This means a lot to me. Ferenz shrugged, but then said with a grin, It's no big deal. Just... His smile faded. Just take care of yourself. And don't worry about us. We'll be fine. I'm sure you will be, Link replied, hiding the uncertainty that he felt. With one final goodbye, he got to his feet, turned, and followed the others from the clearing.